Oh, hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Assalamu alaikum, and just welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good night from wherever you're streaming from. So, welcome to the first event of the Jesus College British Pakistani Bangladeshi access event. It's a really big mouthful, but hello and welcome. So obviously this is the first kind of live session that we have for everyone watching. Essentially, it's just a chance to kind of hear more from students at Oxford and Cambridge. And also just for you guys to ask as many questions as you want. We would honestly always advocate that you ask the most specific questions as you can to get the most out of it. We will have a few people joining us, but for some reason they're a bit late. I do apologize. We'll punish them afterwards. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of hand it over to everyone before I very quickly introduce each one. So I'm gonna call your name and maybe you could just kind of raise your hand. So first we have Mariam. So Mariam is a British Pakistani from Slough. She studied her A levels in English, sociology, psychology, and performing arts. She then went on to complete her undergraduate degree at Lady Margaret Hall College at Oxford in English. She graduated in 2013. She's now the Senior Access Officer at Lady Margaret Hall College. And she also comes from a low-income family with 5 other siblings. And her dad is a taxi driver and her mum is a Quran teacher. Mariam, how are you?
Don't you think it's like it can't be a Pakistani Bangladeshi event if people aren't late to the panel?
I mean, you think Oxford would, get that part out of them, but it's fine. Hello.
Thank you so much for
Everyone.
having me.
You're very welcome. Okay, so the person who was late, let's introduce him now. So this is Daniel. Daniel is a British Pakistani from Bradford. Daniel's parents actually immigrated from Pakistan to England, but sadly his father passed away when Daniel was 8, meaning that his mom was a single mother. Daniel did A levels in English, history, and maths, and is now on the foundation year program at Lady Margaret Hall College. And you're doing the politics route, right? The PPE route?
Yeah, I'm doing PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics.
Perfect. And then we have Afia. So Afia is a British Bangladeshi from Tower Hamlets, East London. She's studying biomedical science at St. Catherine's College, and she did her A levels in biology, chemistry, and English, which is a very interesting mix. Afia also is a first generation student and is actually the first person in her family to go on to university. And then lastly, we have Reshma. Reshma is a British Bangladeshi from West London. She did her A levels in history, government politics, economics, and she's now studying for her final year at history at Pembroke College, and she's the first woman in her family to study at university. I'll very quickly give some information about myself. So my name is Ibrahim Mohammed. I go by Isma Online. I'm from Hackney, East London. I did my A levels in psychology, sociology, English, and media. I then went to Cambridge University. I did my undergrad in psychology. I then did a year to do the conversion course into law. I kind of hesitated because it's got some horrible flashbacks. Law school was very hard. I did 1 year of law school and I'm now doing my master's in education at St. Anne's College in Oxford. I'm also half Bangladeshi and half Pakistani as well. Okay, so I want to kind of just get in there straight away. This panel is about kind of transitioning to Oxford. Is Oxford, a safe space? Let's just start off with kind of talking about the acceptance. So you've all, got that letter. I don't know if some of you got emails. I got a letter. I'm hoping you all got letters. And you open it up, you found out that you're going to Oxford. Congratulations, mashallah. The whole world is screaming. And now you are essentially moving. I firstly want to ask, did some of your parents actually support this? I think for a lot of us, and I think for the typical Oxford student, of course, my family supported me every single day. And, my school gave me about 50 mock interviews. But for some of us, our parents can be a bit, maybe the opposite. And I know for a lot of Asian people specifically, sometimes our parents differ. For Asian guys, maybe it's more common to have your parents agree for you to go. I was just like, bye, I'm leaving. So I kind of want to ask the women on the panel, how did you go about, number one, telling your family, your parents that you got into Oxford, and then 2, having that conversation of, asking them, can I go? And we'll first start off with Mariam, if that's okay, and then we'll move on to Afia and then the rest of them.
So my mum was actually elated. She was like over the moon. She just wanted a picture of someone with a degree that she could put up. My dad was equally happy, but there was a lot of disapproval in my wider extended family. Like there were so many comments from the kind of local gossiping uncles, aunties, loads of quips being made about like Mariam's different. You know, she's not going to fit in. She's not supposed to leave home. You know, it's going to change her as a Muslim. All sorts of things. I think I'm very lucky that my mom, she's a very religious lady, but she's like super, super cool. She was like championing my rights, and she was like, you know, this is what you're allowed to do. Da, 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 da. So she was just telling everyone, no, no, no. And I was like, yes. But she was basically like quivering in her hijab also when she was hearing all of these comments, and she was petrified, honestly. And it took me sitting her down, and I was like, Mom, what are you scared about? And I was having a conversation, and, you know, me saying, you just got to trust me, addressing those concerns. I know that she 100% would have benefited from hearing from someone in her position. You know, someone who comes from her background, could speak in her native language. That's what she does for other people now, which is really cool. And so when I'm doing outreach, you know, when I know girls are in a similar position, I say to them, listen, you know, tell your parents to speak to me. I'll put them in touch with my mom. I'll put them in touch with the local imam at Oxford. I think it's really difficult. I don't know about you guys, but culturally we are taught a little bit just not to say anything. You know, if somebody says you can't do this, you're expected sometimes, I'm not generalizing, out of respect for elders, whatever it might be, not to say anything. But I think it's so, so important to, you know, speak up for your rights. And there is a way of gently doing that so that, you know, you can challenge those views, and that's to the benefit of everyone, you know. So that's how I went about it.
So Mariam, you kind of had your extended family doing all the gossiping and like, you know, maybe she shouldn't go there. And then your mum was one who was like, you know, I'm going to push for it. Afia, I feel like with you, that's kind of the opposite, right? It was actually your extended family that encouraged you to go. Do you want to explain kind of how you told your parents and then kind of convincing them, let me go?
Okay, so my mom kind of knew that I was applying to Oxford in the first place, but she didn't really understand what Oxford was. So she was just like, oh, look, she's applying to university. I have no problem with that. Guess once I got my offer, they kind of realized it meant that I would have had to move out of my home, considering all the other universities that I applied for were all in London, and therefore I didn't need to move out. And they were very, very hesitant to let me do that. They didn't want me to move out, especially since none of my older siblings moved out as well. So I would have been the first to do that. And I guess at first it was a hard no, like you are not going to Oxford. And I guess part of that was because they didn't really understand what Oxford and Cambridge were. Like they didn't really know that they were really good universities with high quality teaching. And I guess when they told my extended family about me getting into Oxford, it was their reaction and their kind of support that kind of got it into my parents' head that Oxford isn't like a normal university. It's kind of like a once in a life opportunity. And I guess from that moment on, they kind of supported me in going to Oxford. And it was like from a straight no to like, yes, you're definitely going. We don't care what happens, you're going to Oxford. So yeah, that was my kind of story of getting into Oxford.
Rashma, as the first woman to go to university in your household, can you explain kind of what are the concerns? Because sometimes it's quite wild, you know, to hear that like your child is going to Oxbridge, but the answer could be no. It's, you know, one of the best universities and they might stop you. But why? Why are parents, why would they be concerned about sending their more likely daughters to go to Oxford?
Yeah, I think the concerns are just, there's a plethora of concerns. I actually had to battle with my parents for about exactly a year to let me go out, even on results day. When I got the results that, you know, my A-level grades were high enough to get into Oxford, they were still like, yeah, you can commute from home or you can go to UCL. There's no living out. There's so many concerns. I think ultimately there's a lot of fear of the unknown. Like they don't know about Oxford, so they don't understand the culture here, and they don't really know what they're sending their child into. My dad actually worked in Oxford as a restaurant worker sort of maybe 30, 40 years ago, at a point where it was incredibly racist. So he was like, I'm sending my daughter to a very unsafe environment. And it was only when he came and he did a visit to Oxford that he realized actually this place has like transformed so much. And, you know, they've got this like all these modern things going on and it's a lot safer. So, you know, when he started to see that, that's when his eyes are kind of opening up a bit. There's a lot of cultural concern and cultural stigma, sort of as Mariam and Afia have described. And I think as well, like sometimes, I think especially my parents, one thing that they really doubted, and at first I thought they doubted me and their trust in me, and I took that so personally and I was so hurt by it. But what I realized is actually they were doubting their own parenting. They weren't putting enough in themselves, in the person that they had raised, and in the values that they've instilled with us that are so strong and so deeply rooted, ultimately in our religion, but also in our culture. And what I realized is that there's a lot of fear of unknown and lack of trust within themselves. And once those things can slowly be unpeeled through a variety of resources and conversations, it makes the whole process significantly easier.
Wow, Reshma said it's not my problem, it's your problem. I'm joking. No, I can completely agree. And I think that we've seen a big change. We've seen, for example, this event happen, but we've also seen, like Mariam kind of very much pointed out, that we're seeing staff members take a leap and saying that if you do have doubts, if your parents aren't if they're on the curb about sending you here, then allow them to speak to us. Let's expose them to Oxford and actually get them to realize that it's quite a safe environment. Yeah, I will say that also, in the Oxbridge dynamic, there are obviously some colleges in Cambridge that are just, female only. So I would say do your research when it comes to also colleges and just life in general at Oxbridge. Okay, so the next question I want to ask is, okay, so you're here now, you're at Oxford. I want to talk Freshers Week. Okay, now let's be honest and let's be very authentic about this. We know that some uni culture is crazy. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a show on BBC Three that was always about like Freshers Week and everyone getting drunk and taking drugs and doing all sorts of shenanigans, which might be a concern that parents have. And I kind of want to ask you guys, how was it for you? Because essentially we're going to a very kind of, white university where alcohol and partying is kind of almost at the forefront of student life. How did you manage that? I want to ask Daniel first. I want to kind of get your perspective on, did you kind of feel that laddish pressure, that laddish culture of, let's go and, okay, clearly I'm not that laddish, I can't act it, but did you ever feel pressure as a boy to kind of go out there and go crazy?
Yeah, I guess the truth is there is a lot of that culture and there's no hiding away from that. But I think it depends on what circles you are actually in as well. So for me, I did feel it at the start, but then I also knew that there was ISOC and there was PACSOC to kind of fall back upon. So even though there is these kind of avenues, I think it's important to just realize what your perspective on things are and then judge accordingly. So if you feel as if you're really uncomfortable about around alcohol, then maybe don't go to a hall or where they often do serve drinks. So I think it's really important to, before going to Oxford, find out where your limits are. So then when you go there, it isn't as if you're contending with all these beliefs straight away.
And Mariam, I kind of want to ask you how you dealt with some of the pressures, because again, you could be in a hall, and I remember you mentioning that you were actually one of the only Muslim women in your cohort at the time. So, you're on your halls, in your staircases, you've got your kind of fresher groups, and you might be the only Muslim there. What do you do? Do you decide, what, I'm going to do what all the media says, I'm going to take my hijab off, I'm going to go party? Or instead, do you actually, do you tell them that you don't want to go out? How did you manage Freshers Week?
It was really tough, I'm not going to lie. And I have to caveat this with the fact that things have hugely changed since. I'm a little bit old now. So, I was there about 10 years ago or so. And I was, a lot of the time, the only Muslim in the room. And I found it quite hard to navigate, so for example, for English subject meetings, we'd go out, they'd suggest, let's go out to the pub. And I was like, ooh. And I didn't really know how to deal with that first. And then I was like, why don't I just say, guys, I don't drink. I don't actually feel comfortable in those spaces. And a lot of the time it's just in your mind. And, it's been built up and it's what you've seen in the media. It's a kind of lack of exposure. And the moment I suggested, hey, is there any chance we can go for a waffle instead? They're like, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, of course. Why didn't you say first? And I was like, oh, okay. I think I learned quite quickly actually that, one, there are more narratives than just the narrative that I thought existed, even if it's not as representative at that time as I'd wanted it to be. But it wasn't just, you can only go drinking, you can only do this. Especially now, we have, you have two streams for Freshers Week. So you have the one where people want to go clubbing, etc. And then you have my favorite one, which is let's go to the cinema, let's go to ice skating, even though I can't skate, let's go get ice cream, you know, etc., etc. So there's definitely a, you know, place for people who don't do those things. And I very quickly learned that I have a lot in common with the people I thought I had nothing in common with also. And, you know, I could get on with them and hang out with them outside of those spheres that I didn't want to be. And I think Danielle is so right to say, you need to know what your limits are and what you're comfortable with. Some people, you know, are happy to still go out, which is great. That's super for them. It's working out what works for you. And I think that's incredibly important.
I think that's very true, is the idea that kind of you give what you want to get, like the idea that you have those two different kind of Freshers Week and you essentially get to decide what you want to do. And sometimes it's not even just like Muslims who want to not go clubbing. There's also just general people who are rather more introverted, who'd rather not go out and instead just kind of chill indoors or just kind of, you know, go to board game nights instead, as opposed to going clubbing all the time. So I think it appeals to a lot more than just Muslims, of those who don't always want to just go partying and clubbing. Okay, so now I want to ask, all of us are from different parts of the UK, people from London, people from Bradford, people from Slough, and our kind of, those areas are quite diverse. You know, we have our 24/7 corner shops, you know, we have kind of good signal. I don't know if you realize there's good phone signal, and we also just have a liveliness and diversity. You know, it's easy for you to go get halal food, for you to go get good seasoned food. And so I want to ask kind of all of you, how did you cope from moving from a home where you had all those kind of norms and then going to Oxford that was so different? I want to get your perspective on this as someone, you know, from kind of East London. How did you deal with that? And we have a question here that actually says, what is the availability of halal food in Oxford? So how did you kind of make that transition?
If I'm being honest, when I got to Oxford, it was a horrible transition. I guess it was such a culture shock to go from East London to Oxford, and you know, the different types of people, the different kind of facilities. I was not prepared, and I was very shocked when I actually got there. And initially, like, I couldn't get used to the fact that shops close at like 8 p.m. and whatnot, and you couldn't find anything after that. And also, like, not seeing the type of people that I'm used to here in London, like, it's constantly busy 24/7. And I guess it was more of a learning curve. Like, at first I couldn't adapt at all, but eventually I got used to the timings at Oxford and how they have like different meal times, and going to hall really helped in terms of kind of adjusting to the different people at Oxford. And also my college in particular, they do halal food, but you have to request in advance, which is a bit inconvenient. But unlike other colleges, they do actually offer halal meat, which is really good. And I guess in terms of halal provisions, we do have Cowley, which is known for its halal shops, and it's not too far from my college, at least. So it's really a nice way to kind of get your halal food instead of having to go down like vegetarian or vegan options. So I quite like that.
I think for me, I actually knew that it would be such a shock. So I prepared for it. I knew that Cambridge was going to be dry, and not just their food, their chicken. Also, it was going to be a bit dry generally because you have that kind of lack of culture there. But I think the difference between me is I prepared that. So I brought it with me. Like, my suitcase was full of seasoning. My drawers now are so full of seasoning. And I feel like I kind of knew in advance, like, what halal shops to go to. I also kind of just knew that I just knew it was going to be different. So I always was kind of like unapologetic with my identity as someone from London. Like, I think there wouldn't be one sentence where I would say, like, I'm a Londoner. Like, by the way, I'm a Londoner. By the way, I'm a Londoner. Which I think got quite annoying. Rashma, can we get your perspective on that? Kind of, how did you transition from coming from home to Oxford and dealing with those like cultural norms?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience was kind of mixed. I went home every sort of 2 weeks when I was here in Oxford. I wouldn't advocate it, to be honest. It was kind of like it was like the agreement with my parents that I would have to come home really regularly, and like we managed to come out of that now. Like, I haven't been home in like 7 weeks. So you know, we're here now. But I went home so often. I always used to bring back like stacks of containers of curry that like I would just never be really missing out too much. So I was always kind of floating between two spaces, this like place that has a very different culture to, you know, home. I did find it hard, but I spent a lot of my time with the Islamic society and the Bangladeshi society. So I kind of made sure that I surrounded myself with company that made me feel rooted, that made me feel close to my culture. Because when I was here, I just felt like, you know what, I'm clinging onto it by a thread. I need to find anyone and everyone who's gonna like share that culture with me. And it's something I definitely like championed when I was here at uni. Like I was a JCR ethnic minority rep in my second year, and in the ISOC, like I was involved in their World Cultural Fair. Like I made sure that I was close to my culture and I was championing my culture and other people's. And it's something that I was so adamant to like not lose when I was here, and it's only something that has strengthened throughout my time.
I just want to clarify for everyone, because I'm pretty much the same. When you hear words like ISOC, PACSOC, Bangladeshi SOC, so there are societies at university that are kind of student run and student led, and it's basically just having like, I want to say different groups of friends, kind of a friendship circle that is run by society. So you have like Pakistan Society, which is mainly Pakistan students. You have ISOC, which is Islamic students, and they run events from like welfare events, from kind of education events, just also meetups as well that happen like every week. Usually there's a group chat that you have. I don't know if you guys are on your kind of ISOC group chats, the WhatsApp groups. So you kind of never really feel alone in that sense. And I think because of social media, because of kind of, WhatsApp messaging, you always have your group, even though in your college, it might not be as diverse, you always have like a group that you can associate with. For me, I actually didn't join my ISOC and my Pakistan Society in Cambridge until second year. And I think it's because I just wanted to find myself. We have a question here actually that says, some people say that you can lose your identity by going to uni. Is that the case? And I think for me, going to university was a chance for me to kind of find my identity. And so in my first year, I didn't join anything Pakistan or Islamic related. I kind of was just at my college and I had a lot of fun. But then there comes a point where you're like, oh, here we go again. Like more people drinking, what does anyone want to come maybe to the halal shop instead? And then you kind of want to almost be a part of those groups. I want to ask anyone, Daniel, I want to ask you the identity aspect. Do you feel like you're kind of losing or gaining an identity? How would you react to that question?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because I guess from Bradford, it's an area that's very heavily dominated by British Muslims. So it was a big change from when Oxford, which is majority white. So it was really hard to kind of deal with that, and I was quite homesick the first few weeks. But I guess what I tried to do was just kind of balance with, I wanted to kind of branch out, but also keep a kind of close-knit group. So I joined PACSOC and ISOC. I became like the vice president of PACSOC because I wanted to help bring some more change. And yeah, I think it's really just identifying what parts of you want to keep and what parts of you think I can change, I can adapt, because I didn't just want to interact with people who I've interacted with my whole life. I wanted to see different perspectives and evolve, which I think uni is about. So yeah, I think it's just kind of balancing both of them. So to answer the question, I don't think I've kind of gained or lost my identity. I've just kind of become more of me with the opportunities that Oxford has given me.
I mean, that's, perfect answer. Mariam, can I ask you, because you've been in Oxford for a while, so how has your identity, if it has,
rid of me.
changed?
I would say so at the very beginning, I think I mentioned to you, because I was so painfully aware that I was a minority, and like I had to empower myself, and I was like, no, like navigating this as a minority, like it inspires change. It's a challenge to the system. Things have changed a huge amount. Like, looking around, things look so much more normal to me now. For me, I think it was when I left, everything Danielle says is completely right. It's about like, picking what you want. It's about also branching out. I knew that Islam was really important to me and my culture was really important to me. And so I needed to hold on to that. But also, I think I mentioned to you too that I kind of feel like I had a like reconversion of sorts. It's like growing up, like you're reading namaz because your mum told you to, like it's such a game of Chinese whispers. And then suddenly it was like, okay, what do I do? Am I going to keep doing this for myself? Or am I going to ditch it? Like, how does this work? And suddenly you're like with like-minded people, same age, also finding, the PACSOC, ISOC. And for me, it was a really powerful thing. Like I became closer to my religion and closer to my culture all while still being able to branch out to all of these other things while I was a student at uni. I think it did me a world of wonder, actually.
We actually have a question that says, do you recommend staying within your own culture or broadening your circle? And I think you answered that kind of perfectly, which you can do both, you know? You can, you know, stay within the Islamic society or the Pakistan society, or even just kind of like the class, because, you know, there's like class society as well, and still broaden. And I think you kind of almost, you should want to do that, because again, at Oxbridge, you are going to be with some of the world's next thinkers. These are some of the most academic individuals in the world. And at least for me, I didn't have that in Hackney. Do you know what I mean? Like in my school, there wasn't really anyone who was like dedicated to studying or the love of a subject. And finally you have that. So I completely agree that like, you can do both, you know, you can have your own culture and also expand to others. And I also want to kind of go off one thing that Reshma said, which was during her time at Oxford, she kind of went home. So assuming there might have been elements of homesickness there. I think for some individuals, at least for me at Cambridge, I got so lost in the bubble that I feel like I couldn't even go home. Because if I go home, that's like, you know, the travel there, the amount of time I'm not going to be studying there, and that's going to take away from that. Daniel, you live in Bradford, so going home isn't, you know, that much of a possibility. So what do you do in times of homesickness?
Yeah, I feel like that's a good question. Yeah, because I haven't been home like last term and I haven't been home this term. So it is difficult because you don't get to physically see your family. But I do ring my mum every day, so, and we have a chat about like what she's done and what I've done, and she tries to understand what reading I've done and give me some advice on it. But no, I guess that, just ringing my friends and just basically trying to stay in touch with my roots as well as establishing new ones. So I think it's just really important to keep grounded, and that's what I've tried to do at my time so far.
What do you mean by like kind of keeping in touch with your roots? What does that mean?
So I guess still, so I'm still involved with Access work in Bradford, like trying to get kids from Bradford and the North accepted into Oxford. And I guess just speaking to them and their struggles, it shows like that was just me like 12 months ago. So it's quite grounding in that aspect. And also just I guess discussing with all of my friends, like how they're doing, like we're all at university, like even though this is Oxford, it's still a university. So I just try to ground myself in that way as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think also for some people, this might be a controversial take. Sometimes you need a break from your family, at least. I think for me, it definitely helped having like space, just being able to kind of like have my own room and have my own ensuite, my own bathroom for the first time, and being in charge of my money, being in charge of my own food. Like it kind of made me more independent, which I actually appreciated. But Afia, sometimes that privilege of having your own bathroom isn't always the case. And I was quite shocked to hear that when you first moved in, you didn't have your own bathroom. Can you just explain to me that? Because that is just a story within itself.
Okay, so certain Oxford colleges, they don't really take into account religious requirements, and unfortunately, St. Catherine's was one of those colleges. So as a first year, I was randomly allocated a room, and none of these rooms had ensuite. So I was kind of forced to have mixed bathrooms and mixed facilities, which as a South Asian female wasn't really something my parents like, or I didn't like either, because from going to sharing a house with people to going to university, and kind of sharing these facilities with people you don't really know, and especially with me, it was mixed, so that kind of added to that. I really found it difficult to kind of navigate that, and as a hijab wearing female as well, it just meant my privacy was kind of invaded most of the time, and I had to be really aware of my surroundings and who I was in the presence of. And so I'd guess in that sense, a lot of other people, like a lot of other ISOC Muslims that I've talked to also have been through the same issue, but we kind of navigated through it just by enjoying it, I guess. And I guess raising awareness about how religious requirements are just as valid as medical requirements is something that we should be championing, and that's actually something our college is trying to encourage now, and we're currently trying to change this whole, religious requirements isn't enough a valid reason for ensuite, and kind of making it more comfortable for people to apply to the colleges. I guess that's something we need to kind of improve.
I think one really important aspect that your kind of story highlights is the importance of student politics. Now, for those who don't know what that is, student politics, I personally think, is one of the best aspects of university. You know, each college you go to will have their own kind of student body. So if you go to Jesus College, there will be a Jesus student body, and that will be divided into the JCR, which is the junior common room, which is for undergrads, and the MCR, which is for postgrads. So basically, it's like student representatives, and these representatives that come president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, X, Y, and Z, you know, black and minority ethnic officer, these kind of student roles actually lead a lot of conversation. So if there is an issue, for example, with ensuites, these committees will then go to the heads of the college, you know, the president of the college and the senior tutor of the college, and say, we have some issues, can you address them? At Wolfson College at Cambridge, when I was vice president, and we did so much for the Muslim community. And for Ramadan, we did so much. Like, we had the canteen open longer, we had prayer spaces, we got a budget to kind of pay for everyone's first iftar meal. My point is that these kind of college communities are really important. And I think also the college staff within itself were very like willing to adapt. In my experience, they were just like, oh, no one has ever said this to us before. And so I think sometimes you kind of have to be that individual or support that movement who kind of fights for those changes. And so having like ensuite rooms for Muslim students, that could be something that hasn't been advocated for before. But now kind of after you're leading that with your college, that, you know, for the next generation, that could be something that is sorted. So my problem is, my kind of main comment is, sometimes you have to be the change you want to see. So that's one thing I want to highlight. Right, we've got some questions here. The first thing I just want to address is, apparently this is so popular that the Union Spaces, the website that this live stream was on, has almost crashed. So just an FYI to everyone, this is being recorded and this will go on YouTube, and the next panels we have will also go on YouTube as well. So don't worry, you're not going to miss out anything. Okay, I want to highlight one question, which is, how did you deal with imposter syndrome and thinking you were only accepted because the college had to fit its racial diversity quota and not your own merit? I want to say one thing this very quickly, okay? I don't know about you guys, I have never had imposter syndrome, never. And it's because I've always said to myself, not on your own academic merit, I got my grades. Like, I got the entry requirements. In fact, I got above that and I passed the interview. Like, I'm in. And I think what some people need to remember is there are people from Eton, no shade to Eton, there are some people from Eton who didn't even get the grades that kind of I got. And so, and even if they did, they're being supported by so many individuals. And you as someone from our background is still here. So that whole question of like, not your own merit, you are on your own merit. But let's bring that to the panelists. How did you deal with imposter syndrome? Mariam, I want to kind of ask you this first. One, did you have it? And two, how did you deal with it?
I had it so bad. Honestly, so you know, everybody has college hoodies. All of my friends were buying them, like LMH Oxford, and I was like, nah, they've made a mistake. Like, let me wait until the end of the first term. If they don't kick me out, then I'll get one. And a few weeks in, I was like, you know what, enough's enough. I really want a college hoodie. And so I got one, but it was still so insecure. And I remember I knocked on my tutor's door, Professor Helen Barr, and I was like, Helen, like, why did you pick me? I was like, I got 1A start GCSEs, like, I come from this background, you know, blah, 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 blah. It just went on and on until she kind of told me to shut up, and then said something which really actually changed my narrative. And what she said to me is, Mariam, listen, it's really not about, you know, how much you know, it's about what you can do with what you know. What you need to know right now more than anything else is you deserve to be here as much as anybody else who walks through that door, if not more. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That changed everything for me. I was so scared about me not being the Oxford type and looking at other people and being like, yeah, you're the Oxford type. The same people, by the way, at the end of it, we have the same grade, you know? And as you say, our journeys were completely different there. It's like, yes. I just spent so much time looking at them that I nearly shot myself in the foot. And I think it's so important to reassure yourselves that, you know, ultimately, as you say, we take you based on academic merit only. I promise there are no quotas. I'm saying this now on the other side also. Like, if you get there, the tutors recognize talent, okay? And you 100% deserve to be there. Now I want to say something about you not getting there. So let's say you don't get an interview or you don't get a space. Guys, at the end of the day, there are also only so many spaces that we have, right? It's not in any way a reflection of you. And Oxford also isn't the be all end all. You guys are going to go somewhere else and be equally as epic. But I think it's so, so important not to buy into the misconceptions of I can't fit in, like I'm this. Because if I'd done that, I simply wouldn't have applied, and then I wouldn't be sat here speaking about imposter syndrome. So yeah, that's how I dealt with it, I think.
Thank you. That was that was such an amazing response. I love that you kind of gave it from a staff perspective as well. The fact that you're still here also, I think, speaks volumes that, you know, you definitely got over that. Reshma, I want to ask you now, because you're a finalist, right? So you first year, second year, and third year. What was your experience if you, number one, had imposter syndrome, and then two, what did you do about that?
Yeah, I absolutely had imposter syndrome before I even applied here, and I still have it now, and I've kind of accepted I'm going to have it because it's something that's really hard to get over, and it's really about a mindset. Normally what happens is I just have a cry about it and I just feel sorry for myself. And I think it's so valid. Like I have this tutor, a history tutor, who actually interviewed me. He has an office. He has 3 sofas in his office. Every single year, I don't know why, it's like with mid-November period, I go to that office and have a massive breakdown about why I don't deserve to be here. And he's listened to me every time. I'm telling you, these meetings have been like 2 hours long. And then after that, I kind of had to just pick myself back up. And the way that I pick myself back up is to say that, do you know what? Despite all these obstacles, being the first woman in my family to come here, being a British Bangladeshi person, British Muslim, visible Muslim, working class, the first in my school to come to Oxford or Cambridge, I was like, hang on a second, I had to go through so much more to get here. Like, I don't just deserve to be here, I deserve to be here in a way more than anyone who was privately schooled, who had all these resources that were pumped into them from the minute they were born. So in a way, you kind of have to realize that you have to kind of back yourself in that sense. And it goes back to what it says. I think another thing as well with imposter syndrome is that everybody actually feels it, no matter like who you are. Like even probably, you know, the eating kids, they may be so aware of the privilege that they realize that maybe they're not meant to be here. And that's not to say that they're not. As Mariam said, you know, they based on academic merit. And another thing I would just sort of link back to religion, especially for those who are Muslim, is, you know, somebody once said to me that your tutors don't make mistakes in who they choose because it's based on academic merit, and they have all the years of experience in seeing that. But above that, like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't make mistakes. This is his perfect plan for you, that you come here, and it's perfect plan if you don't, it's his perfect plan if you don't come here. So either way, it's a win-win. Like, and you just gotta remember that, you gotta be patient, and you gotta like back yourself no matter where you go, whether that's Oxford, Cambridge, or somewhere else.
Come on, TEDx speaker. Literally, everything you said is, I mean, I personally agree with 100%. And I think that one thing that you have is that resilience, you know, when you've kind of gone through all those barriers to still be here. And as Mariam pointed out, getting the same grade, you know. So I think, yeah, Oxford, in my opinion, never makes mistakes. Okay, we've got 10 minutes on the clock, so I kind of want to ask a couple of few questions. I want to ask, again, to the women on the panel, which is, some students have sent questions now, which is, okay, so you've got the offer and then you convince your parents to let you go. But before that, you know, how do you actually convince them that you kind of want to apply? Or is that something you should even tell? How do you kind of convince that your parents are going to at least apply? Let's start with you, because like you said, your parents didn't even know what Oxbridge really was at the time.
Yeah, so I guess with applying to Oxford, they just thought I was applying to a normal university, and I just went through the same process my brothers and sister did. So my parents all want us to go to university, so kind of persuading them to let me go Oxford wasn't, to apply to Oxford wasn't really an issue in my case. They just thought it was a normal university, so I applied to it like a normal university. Yeah, I didn't really have any issues that way because they didn't know what Oxford was in the first place. So.
Mariam, is that something that you get asked a lot as like an administrative officer, when people say, how do I convince them to?
Yeah, for sure. They're like, how did you even like sit down with your parents and say, let me go to Oxford? And there's a small chance I maybe applied without telling anyone in the first place. Because I didn't think I was going to get in. I was like, forget that. Yeah, I can give them advice now based on where I am, but like I'm never able to say, well, I did this, I did that. But when it came time to telling them, it was possibly when I got the interview, and then I just sat down with them, and my mom was so surprised, and she was like, what? And actually one of the things she said to me is, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, Mom, I was just scared that you were going to say no. And I think it's so important, like your parents will appreciate your honesty and giving them that chance in the first place, like just sitting down and like just have it out with them. And maybe apply without telling them. No, I'm just joking.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that because I didn't tell anyone that I was applying to Cambridge and even Oxford as well. Like I didn't tell them either time. And I think I told my family like that I got in maybe like 3 months afterwards, because I think for me, I just didn't want anyone to ruin this moment. Like it was such a good moment. I didn't want anyone kind of being negative or trying to bring me down. But yeah, it's different for me because, you know, I'm a guy and I think it's so much easier for someone to just, you know, let me go. Mariam,
Sorry, I was just going to add to that, that I have dealt with parents and students where students get in touch and they're like, my mum and dad really aren't letting me apply. And what I normally do is I either like invite them for a call or for a tour. So I'm like, bring your mum and dad down if you can, and I'll personally take them around, and we'll have some students from ISOC, from PACSOC, or, you know, let's set up a Zoom. Well, now at the time we used to do Skype. Let's set up a call or something. That's really helpful. You know, if there is anybody here who's thinking, I don't even know how to start that conversation, like if you need our support, like honestly, just like drop us a message. We're really keen to help.
Reshma, go for it.
Yeah, so I did tell my parents, and in a way they were kind of just like, yeah, go for it, because I had 5 choices. And basically, I think no one actually thought I was going to get an offer because no one backed me, really. They were just like, well, none of the girls in this family have been to university. None of my cousins, none of my sisters. Like, what's the chances of every day? She's a smart kid, but she's not like that smart, you know? Like, somehow, alhamdulillah, I got the offer. Then they were like, oh, damn, like, we thought we didn't have to go through this. And then I actually planned a visit to Oxford. And that was when my dad was like, And I made him meet my mom at the Islamic Center. I got him to meet one of my interviewers who said to her, like, your daughter is like amazing. She deserves to be here. Like, this wasn't like fake, you know? And like that really was a turning point. I'm not going to lie. It was like 2 steps forward and then 5 steps back at one point. But like the fact that they made that 2 steps meant that for me was a sign that, okay, do you know what? I can convince them.
So a lot of the questions that we have had, by the way, if anyone who is listening or watching, are to do with like some academics. So the next panel after this at 3:30 will focus on the kind of more academic questions. But the last question that I want to ask all of you, and I'm just curious to know, is has there been a moment during your time at Oxford where you just thought, I'm in love with this place, where kind of maybe you infused your culture with it? I'll start because this is actually, you know, well done to Oxford for this. Even though it was during my time at Cambridge, it was Oxford's Islamic Society that had a Ramadan event where we actually came for iftar. So a bunch of us at Cambridge, we finished our exams and then we came for iftar at Oxford. And we were in, I can't remember what college it was. I don't know if you remember, Mariam, but there was a college, I think it was Trinity College. And one of the ISOC boys was on the kind of staircase and he was reciting the Azan. And I was like, we're about to have this formal hall dinner at like 8:30 p.m. like for iftari, and we have like a Muslim student doing the Azan. I was like, where am I? And I was like, this is Oxford. Do you know what I mean? A place where you can integrate your religion, your culture, and also celebrate the academic side. We don't have that much time left, but everyone, I just want to know, Mariam, we'll start off with you, and then we'll go Daniel, Afia, and Reshma. What was your favorite moment at Oxford?
Exactly the same thing. So LMH do an annual interfaith iftar every year, and we invite people of all faiths, no faiths. Like imagine the dining hall with like doner kebab, samosa on high table, bunting, balloons, lanterns. My mum came last year, and just like you're saying, they did the azan. We read namaz on the fellows lawn when normally nobody ever goes. We were all in tears. The principal was in tears. And it's just what you're saying. It's like I had this huge moment of, you know what, this is a place for everyone. And it just was so cool to see everybody getting together to share their similarities, but also to celebrate their differences. It was epic.
Yeah, well, I haven't been at Oxford for long, so I guess I haven't had any experience of that, but I can't wait for the iftar if Trinity goes along next term. But I think like every experience at Oxford has been great. Like, but one particular one was just, I guess, as a PACSOC, like just organizing events. And one of the things you mentioned about student politics is when you bring things together and bring people from different faiths and like completely different circles, and then they all hear one speaker talk about what their perspective on life is. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, so I haven't had many experiences in Oxford, partly because of working from home and, having terms at home. So I was kind of sad I missed Trinity and like the Ramadan vibe. I didn't really get to experience that in Oxford. But last year in Hillary, in my first year, we had Discover Islam Week, and in that we had the World Culture Fair, which Rashma kind of handled. And I guess that was the first moment I was just really proud of being in Oxford, because it was just kind of like a fair where we kind of introduced people to different faiths, and we were showing off Bangladesh because I was part of the Bangladesh stall. And I guess just introducing people to this like different faith and my faith as well and my ethnicity, I guess that was just me kind of finally acknowledging that, people from different faiths can come to Oxford and we all belong at Oxford. And I guess just getting that notion across to people that don't really know much about other faiths, I think that was my kind of moment at Oxford.
And mine was the same as Afia's. Like, World Cultural Fair that day honestly epitomized my entire Oxford experience, and I felt like who I am as well. It was so beautiful. It was done with the ISOC. The vibe was incredible. Like, people that I looked up to and who were graduating that year, it was just such a special day. From the minute it started, literally at midnight, like wrapping up an essay and like crisis things, and waking up after like 3 hours of sleep, running to an event, like literally took my whole makeup bag, outfit, and all the event stuff, like 4 bags like on my back and shoulders, and then going back feeling exhausted, and then also just like ending my night literally just like looking at the stars in Oxford, because I live in a city, so you don't get to see stars often, and just appreciating like the beauty literally like inside and out of this place, from the people to the actual place. So yeah, that day was just, I wish I could put it into words.
I want to thank every single panelist for taking the time out and appearing today. Just at FYI, for anyone who's watching this, who you do have any specific follow-up questions, if you go on the platform, the one that you sign on to, where you kind of got this link, there is a tab on the left that does say contact us, and there'll be a number of student ambassadors, and then you can find each name. If you want to contact Daniel's name will be there. Just drop him a message, drop anyone a message. We'll be more than happy to kind of answer anything in response to this panel. We'll be having another panel at 3:30, and that will be more focused on the academic side with new students. This is being recorded, so this will be live on YouTube, and this will also be live on the platform as well. Thank you everyone for attending this, and just, I don't know, you've all inspired me to maybe apply for a PhD now. But yeah, just thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.